Right, so we will be continuing on our journey through Chapter 2, Biological Foundations of Behavior. And at this point, we're going to now be taking a closer look at the nervous system. We're going to talk about the body's information superhighway. All right, so here in a nutshell, we'll take a look at the organization of the nervous system. You're going to be taking a look at how it's broken down into the central nervous system as well as the peripheral nervous system. You could break that down even further. So when we're looking at the central nervous system, here we got the spinal cord and of course the brain. And then we're going to look at the peripheral nervous system, and that breaks down into the autonomic nervous system as well as the somatic nervous system. However, with the autonomic nervous system, you see it goes down even further, where we'll talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And of course, like I said, I'm about to go into it deeper, so I'm not going to try to give you every cue that's on the card, but just wanted to prepare you and line up just how our body works. All right, so the central nervous system, you can consider this to be the command center of your body. It's made up of your brain, which is the boss or the executive. And your brain, of course, is going to be making those decisions. It'll interpret information as well as pretty much run the show. Your spinal cord is the messenger superhighway, which sends signals to and from your brain. Now, the central nervous system really is in charge of how we process everything, how we might see things, how we feel, how we think, as well as how we do. It'll help in like things of solving problems to helping remember your favorite songs. The peripheral nervous system is the delivery and pickup service for your central nervous system. Here, it's made up of all these different nerves that's going to be branching out from your body as well as the spinal cord and will rest as well as the rest of your body, that being your muscles, your organs, our skin. And the peripheral nervous system more or less deals with the pain, knowing when things are hot. That's when it's going to send out the information saying, move your hand now if it's over fire. You then will have the somatic nervous system, looking it over and talking about walking, typing, and I'm going to go into it a little deeper, but know that with the somatic nervous system, you'll also have the autonomic nervous system. And this is handling that automatic stuff like heartbeat, breathing, etc. So again, in short, just to kind of help get you in tune of what you need to know, the central nervous system is the decision maker. Your peripheral nervous system is the communication network. All right, so the spinal reflex. Here's your body's quick reaction system. The spinal reflex is kind of like your body's emergency shortcut for reacting to danger or other kind of important stimuli. And really, it's without waiting for your brain to weigh in on this. So the way it works is, one, you'll have the stimulus detected. Um, so say you accidentally touch a hot stove. We used that example earlier. Your special sensors in your skin is going to pick up on the fact that it's too hot. This message will travel to the spinal cord. The signal is going to shoot up the sensory neuron to your spinal cord, and that's not all the way up to the brain. So then the reflex arc is that decision maker. It's going to be inside the spinal cord, the sensory neuron that'll be passing the signal to the inner neuron, and that'll quickly connect to those motor neurons. So think of that inner neuron again as that super fast middleman. It doesn't think, it just reacts. And message is going to go out, motor output, and the motor neuron is going to carry that command back to your muscles. So what happens is your hand is going to automatically move away because it's hot. And that's going to happen instantly. Now, the brain will get updated later. You know, when you have a corporation, the CEO gets everything after the fact, to let everything knows everything's copacetic. Same here holds true. The spinal cord will update the brain. Um, that, oh yeah, guess what? Your hand got in the way and we had to make an executive decision and tell it to move. That's going to be how it works. So that's what that common reflex is going to include. Other type of reflexes, you know how we got the knee jerk reflex when that knee is tapped during a examination? That's part of it as well. So just to recap, your spinal reflex is like your body's instant defense system. Your spinal cord is going to make a decision before your brain even gets the memo. But once everything is cleared, your brain will get caught up. All right, let's continue talking more about that peripheral nervous system, in which it's divided into two parts. Okay, you know, uh, when we're talking about the peripheral nervous system, everything that's outside the brain and the spinal cord is dealt with this system. So kind of imagine your central nervous system again is like second in command. It's that boss's office, and the peripheral nervous system, you could see it as the staff or messengers and workers that's going to be carrying information back and forth between your brain and the spinal cord, or your boss and the CFO or the COO, operating officer. So here we're talking about how it's going to send that to muscles, organs, skin. The peripheral, again, is in two parts. And the first is the somatic nervous system. And the somatic nervous system deals with voluntary system input and output, okay? It's going to control those voluntary movements that allows you to interact with the world. So basically it works like this. Your sensory neurons is going to take information, like when we had the hand over the stove, that ouch moment. It's going to help the motor neurons send those instructions out to your skeletal muscles. Move the hand, right? Now, if you were to say, for example, tap your feet when you're listening to music, um, or when you decide you want to pick up a pencil, what happens is your brain's just sending messages to the somatic system, that allows your arm, your muscles in your arm, and it's telling it to, come on, contract, pick up that pencil. So you want to think of the somatic system really as part of the peripheral nervous system that helps you to control on purpose. Okay? Now, of course, we have the autonomic nervous system, which will automatically regulate those involuntary bodily processes like our heart rate, how we breathe, our digestion process. I'm going to go into it a little deeper on the next slide. So that autonomic nervous system, see it as automatic. And what's happening here is it's going to run the stuff you don't have to think twice about. Like I said, your heartbeat, how we breathe, when we digest food, even when you're sweating. And that's because there's two main branches that works like if you had a car, your gas pedal and your brake pedal. Well, with this, we have what we call the sympathetic nervous system, and that deals with fight or flight. I know you heard about that before. Here we're talking about how it speeds things up when you need it to act really fast. Your heart rate may increase, your pupils can get dilated, um, you might release adrenaline during this time. So here's a great example. You see a snake, and I hate snakes. Man, I used to live in Pearl and deal with snakes all the time. But anyway, what happens is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is in rest and digest, it'll help to calm things down after you've seen it and got rid of it and it's moving on, right? But during the sympathetic, it's that fight or flight stage. Do I go? Do I stay? What do I do? Okay, so here that's what you want to know the difference is. With our sympathetic, that's the fight or flight. And that's when everything jumps into action. And remember, the heart rate will increase, everything's going to move, adrenaline is going to be pumped. And that's because you might have seen that snake. And so your body's trying to decide, do I go, do I stay, do I step on it, what do I do? Now, after the incident is over, the parasympathetic nervous system now takes effect. Okay? This is when rest and digest comes into play. Whoosa! Things start to calm down. You start to conserve your energy. So that's talking about how our heart rate will start to slow down. This is also where digestion is stimulated. It promotes relaxation overall. Think about after eating. You know, you get itis, right? That's what we like to call it, getting itis. But after eating a big meal, our body starts to focus on digestion, and it's like, whew, we got to get this stuff broken down. So, more or less, the autonomic nervous system is really just trying to balance everything. With the sympathetic revs you have, the parasympathetic is going to help you chill out. Taking a look at the overall picture of the peripheral nervous system, know that this equals our communication network. With the somatic system, we know that that's voluntary control. With the autonomic, we know that that's involuntary control. And again, we know that the autonomic is broken up into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. A lot to say in a nutshell. Hopefully, if you didn't get it all, rewind it, listen again. You still have questions, send them to me so that I can help you get clarification. All right. Now we're going to look a little deeper and delve into that crowning glory of yours, the brain. So now we have the hindbrain. This is your body's life support system, okay? The hindbrain is the oldest part of your brain in terms of evolution. You can think of the hindbrain as your body's control room for survival basics. It keeps you alive, and it's going to be running smoothly without you even knowing it. So here's the thing. The hindbrain's going to sit at the back of your head, and it connects the brain to the spinal cord. Here we're looking at how it's handling those main responsibilities. Now it's broken up into parts, and it includes the medulla oblongata, okay, or just medulla. This is your life manager. Here it's going to be controlling those automatic life-sustaining functions like breathing, heart rate, your blood pressure. It's going to make sure that you don't stop breathing while you sleep or to forget that your heart has to beat. Damage in this section is definitely going to be fatal because, again, it runs your body's essential systems. It's what keeps you on autopilot. Now, the next area is your pons. This is the messenger as well as your sleep assistant, and it's that bridge between those different parts of your brain and the spinal cord. Here, it helps with coordination in terms of your movement. It plays a big role in your sleep and how you dream. It also helps to regulate breathing as well as maintaining rhythm. Now, the cerebellum, your little brain is what we also call it. This you can consider the balance coach, okay? It helps you to maintain and coordinate your balance, your posture, those fine motor movements. It helps you in terms of walking, dancing, playing sports smoothly. And when I say smoothly, I mean without wobbling all over, But it's also helping with your motor learning. Like when you learn to ride a bike or if you learn to ride a horse, they say once you have it, it's yours for life. So overall, what you want to just remember about the hindbrain, that it keeps you alive, period. It keeps you moving, period. Again, the medulla is those survival basics. It deals with the heart, the lungs, your respiratory. The pons is the messenger again, in terms of your sleep and dreaming and maintaining breathing rhythms. And then the little brain, the cerebellum, deals with coordination, balance, and motor learning. Now we're moving to the midbrain. Here, this is where alertness and relay center is the main objective for this part of the brain. It sits just above the hindbrain, and it's kind of smaller, but don't let that fool you. It's that traffic controller, and it's an alert system for your brain. It helps you in terms of keeping you awake, keeping you alert, helping you to be able to react to the world around you. Its main responsibilities is that relay station for information that's passing messages between your hindbrain and your forebrain. So think of it more like the middle manager. It's connecting sensory input as well as helping with your higher level thinking. It's going to work with movement in terms of control. It helps with terms of your other brain regions that's going to be guiding your eye movements, coordinating those different basic body movements. It helps in terms of sensory processing by handling quick responses to things that you might see or hear. And when I say that, think about when you hear something. You'll turn your head if someone was to call your name, right? So see that as that type of sudden movement I was just talking about. Now, we have what we also call reticular formation. This is that wake-up call system that's in place. Think of it as a network of neurons that's going to be running the brainstem that's including the midbrain. This is going to help regulate your arousal, your alertness, your attention. And understand, without it, you'll have trouble staying awake as well as staying focused. So, an example you can use to help with this would be if you're falling asleep in class or during this video, but suddenly you hear your name called. The reticular formation kicks in and give you a jolt, so to speak, to help wake you back up. You ever have your head just nod and all of a sudden you're up again? That's that reticular formation clicking and saying, "Wake up! Get back on board!" All right. So just let me just recap the midbrain. It's that relay and alert center, and it's going to connect the lower and higher brain regions that will help control movement as well as process sensory information. The reticular formation, again, is your brain's alarm clock. It's going to keep you alert, it's going to keep you awake, it's going to keep you responsive. So you want to know that the midbrain is going to make sure that you don't just survive, but you're going to help learn to thrive. Oh, I'm feeling so poetic today. Anyway, you get the gist of it. It's what keeps us awake and keeps us aware. Without it, we're not going to function well. Right, so now we come to the forebrain. Here we're looking at the largest and the uppermost part of your brain. It's that thinker, feeler, as well as the decision maker. As you might have heard me call it earlier, it's the executor, the boss. Now your forebrain, again, is the largest part of developed region of your brain. If the hindbrain keeps you alive and the midbrain keeps you alert, well, then that means the forebrain allows you to think, to feel, to plan out, to be able to remember, as well as be you. So, with that being said, know that it includes two main subdivisions: the diencephalon, or your inner forebrain, and the cerebrum, the outer forebrain. The diencephalon is that control hub. Here it's housing the thalamus, which is your brain switchboard operator. Again, now, when we talk about switchboard operator, I might be taking y'all back a little too bit far, but back in the day, we used to have that uh, ability to have answering services, take our calls, or you call in and telephone numbers would be reconnected. It's not like the technology today, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's a relay station. It's taking in those incoming sensory information, everything except smell. Let me correct myself with that. But it's gonna send that sensory info to the correct brain areas to be processed. So one example you could see it as is if we talk about light that hits our eyes. What happens is it's the light's hitting your eyes. It's going to then move toward the thalamus. Then the thalamus is going to send messages to your visual cortex. Think of it like the UPS hub where all these different packages, which you can consider your sensory signals, are being sorted and then sent to the right addresses. Now there's the hypothalamus. We call this the regulator. It helps to maintain your homeostasis. It works with your hunger, your thirst, your body temperature, sleep, and understand there's going to sometimes be things intertwining, okay? But it also is involved with sleep, your sexual behavior. Here it's controlled with the endocrine system, and it's going to talk about the pituitary gland. So, for example, if you're bad like I am with water, and if you become dehydrated, it's going to be the hypothalamus that makes you start feeling thirsty. Now, fun little fact to help. It's tiny, but it's powerful. It's like a thermostat, and it's a hormone um, that is the boss of your body. All right, let me move on. We have the cerebrum, and that's the big brain. The cerebrum is going to take up about 85% of your brain's weight. It's divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, and it's connected by the corpus callosum. That's that bridge that helps to allow conversation, so to speak, between one another. Now, each hemisphere has four lobes, and within each, they all have their own unique jobs. So, you first have the frontal lobe, and again, that's your executive, the CEO. It's the decision maker. It helps problem solving. It's going to help you to plan, to reason, as well as hopefully maintain self control. It contains your motor cortex, and that's going to allow for that voluntary movement. It also homes the Broca's area, which is important for speech production. Now, that's usually found in the left hemisphere. So, an example to kind of help is being able to choose your words for a speech or resisting the urge to just blurt something out like you have no filter, like I always say I don't. But that's what it would be responsible for. Then there's the parietal lobe. That's the navigator. It's going to process your touch, your spatial awareness, as well as any kind of body position. It contains the somatosensory cortex, and that's going to help map those sensations that's from your skin to your muscles. So, in another example to help with it, it's kind of like knowing where your hand is, even if you close your eyes. Then there's the temporal lobe. Think of this as the interpreter. Now, what's happening is it's processing what you hear, your language comprehension, as well as your memory. It contains the Wernicke's area, and that's also usually located in the left hemisphere, which helps you in terms of understanding that spoken language. Realize it plays a big role in forming long-term memories because the hippocampus sits nearby within the limbic system. To kind of help you formulate this, you can think of it as recognizing a song. being able to understand your friend's words, or remembering yesterday's lecture. We then have the occipital lobe. This is the visualizer, and it's entirely going to be focused on your vision. It contains a visual cortex, which helps you to process what your eyes take in. So think of this. It helps to interpret your shapes, your colors, as well as the motion, like if you're looking at a painting or looking at a video. The limbic system is also housed here, and it's the emotional brain, and that's tucked within the forebrain. The limbic system deals with emotion as well as memory. It's that powerhouse. Within it, you're going to find the amygdala. And this is what you consider the fear and emotion detector. It's going to help you to process your fears when you get ticked off or aggression, as well as those strong emotions. Like if you out of nowhere just jump when you see a shadow. The hippocampus is also the memory maker. More or less what happens is it's going to convert your short-term memory into long-term memory. So an example of this is trying to say is kind of remembering where you parked your car when you went shopping. The hypothalamus, yeah, we already talked about it, but it's also linked to emotions to your physical states. So think of stress, increased heart rate, that's where this falls in line with. So just to summarize everything about the forebrain, realize it's your most advanced part of the brain. It's dealing with the diencephalon, the thalamus, which is the relay center, the hypothalamus, which is dealing with homeostasis in your hormones, the cerebrum, which is the frontal lobe that deals with thinking, planning, movement, the parietal lobe, which is dealing with touch, spatial awareness, the temporal lobe, working with your hearing, your language, as well as your memory. The occipital lobe is dealing with your vision. And then last but not least, the limbic system. And that deals with emotions as well as memory. And it houses the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. So the forebrain is going to make you capable of being able to feel deeply, think critically, and remember clearly and concisely, as well as being able to act intentionally. All right, moving on. I know you're saying, didn't we just go over the different lobes? We did, but I didn't talk enough about the cerebral cortex. This is your thinking cap of your brain. It's a thin, wrinkly outer layer of your brain that's kind of like a crumpled sheet that's giving the brain its folded look. So even though it's only a few millimeters thick, realize it's packed with billions of neurons, and it's responsible for those abilities that makes us human. Again, it's divided into those two hemispheres, left and right. It's connected by the corpus callosum. And within each hemisphere, again, you have those four lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital. And again, they all have their own special jobs in terms of looking at movement, sensations, our vision, and our hearing. It's dealing with speech, memory, and higher thinking. Okay? It's part of that executive branch. So it's where our conscious thought, our ability to reason, our ability to speak or comprehend language, creativity, as well as decision making habits. The cerebral cortex is your brain's control panel for complex thought as well as awareness. It allows you to put on the thinking cap, so to speak, that's going to set you apart from other species, other animals. That's what puts us on the top of that food chain, so to speak. All right. Okay, so this next module is just going to give you a synopsis of the different ways we may study the brain. All right, let's look at how we record those type of imaging techniques that's used for the brain. First up is the EEG, or the electroencephalogram. This is a test that kind of measures the brain's electrical activity. So your brain cells, neurons, again, is going to communicate with these tiny electrical signals. You remember those neural impulses we talked about? And more or less, what the EEG does is it's going to pick up by placing those small electrodes on your scalp. Now, what do we use this for? It helps us in terms of diagnosing if there's any kind of disorders present, like epilepsy. EEGs are really famous for detecting abnormal brainwave patterns that might be linked to seizures. Then you also have the sleep studies, as well as sleep disorders that it can help with. So doctors might use brain waves to see how it changes your sleep cycle or detect any kind of issues that might be coming up, like narcolepsy or insomnia. Then we also have it's used for checking brain functioning after a particular injury. Like if you got a head injury, or a person may have been in a coma, or you might be experiencing and have tumors. It allows us to help to assess that activity. In terms of when we're talking about research and cognitive studies, psychologists and neuroscientists have been able to use EEGs to study things like attention, our memory, our emotions, as well as how the brain responds to different tasks or different stimuli. So think of the EEG like a heart monitor, which is an EKG, cardiogram, but EEG is for your brain. And more or less, it's going to record those rhythms and patterns of brain activity in real time. It allows us to record those brain waves to try to help again in diagnosing any type of neurological conditions, or to allow us to study sleep, or to better understand how the brain works overall. Now the next one, CTs or CAT scans, computed tomography. This type of scan, we use it in terms of medical imaging that uses x-rays as well as the computer technology to try to create a detailed cross-sectional pictures of one's body. Now, how does this work? So a patient will lie on a table, and it's going to slide into a large donut-shaped scanner, and the machine will start to rotate around the body, taking multiple x-ray images from different angles. And a computer then would help to combine these different images into slices, so to speak. It's going to, like if you're cutting bread, but in this case, these slices will be stacked together to try to make that 3D image of your internal organs, of your bones, or your tissues. Now, what this is used for is when we're trying to detect things like head trauma or any kind of internal bleeding. It helps in terms of diagnosing diseases like tumors, infections, or blood clots. It'll help to guide treatments, because what it does is it'll locate tumors before a surgery, or if we have to, a patient have to have radiation. CT scans allow us also to study the brain and see if there's any brain damage, any kind of strokes, any structural abnormalities. So to help again, to remember this, think again of the CT scan being like a loaf of bread. And it's allowing us to slice to see what's inside. Only instead of a bread, it's your body. Okay? Now, next one, positron emission tomography, or PET scan. The PET scan is looking at your body images or your brain, and it's going to work through the function rather than just the structure. Whereas a CT or MRI scan gives you pictures of what the brain looks like A PET scan is going to show you what the brain is actually doing. So the way it works is a person might get injected with some radioactive tracer, usually in the form of glucose, since the brain uses sugar for energy. And then what happens is the active brain areas will start to eat it and more of this type of glucose, allowing a PET scanner to start to detect where there may be tracer, and it'll go and create these colorful images of your brain activity. We use this to kind of study the brain's function, looking at which areas might activate when you speak, read, or feel different emotions. It'll also help in terms of detecting any type of diseases. And one thing it helps in identifying are issues from Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, or again, epilepsy. Research has demonstrated how a drug affects the brain or how different regions would truly work during these type of tasks. This scan has also allowed us to work with seeing cancer detection, revealing different tumors, and since cancer cells often use more glucose than normal cells, then this is where it can help to promote that. So your PET scan, to give you an analogy, you could consider it to be a heat map of the brain. It's going to show those different hot spots where neurons are working its hardest. Again, it uses radioactive tracer to be able to measure the brain's activity as well as metabolism, allowing a doctor or researchers to be able to create a picture of how the brain functions in real time. Last but not least is the MRI, or magnetic resonance imaging tool. This is powerful, okay? It's a way for us to get imaging done for the brain and the body that will give your medical staff detailed pictures of your structure without using x-rays or radiation, and that's the key feature here. Instead, it's using magnetic fields and radio waves, and you got to be careful. So if you ever have to go and have an MRI done, please make sure you take off anything of metal. Okay, you don't want to have any metal because that's such a powerful magnet inside that machine. Recently, there was an unfortunate accident where a man was killed because he had metal on him, within him, I think. If not on him, he might have had something inside, but nonetheless, it did kill him. So you want to make sure you be careful about that, okay? Hopefully you won't never have to have an MRI, but if you do, you just make sure you don't have all this metal, okay? Now, how does it work? You're going to lie, and they've gotten better over the years. There's different types. The first time I had an MRI, I felt like I was in this tiny cigar tube, and it was so extremely noisy. Then later on, I had another MRI years later where it was out in the open, and it just had this instrument going around. I'm laying down, but it's going around my entire body without me being in a tube. I love that one. But what happens is, if it's the old one, excuse me, if it's the old one, then you will lie inside a tube-shaped machine. The MRI will then use that strong magnet I talked about to align the hydrogen atoms within your body. Radio waves are going to then be sent through, and it's going to cause the atoms to produce those special signals we needed to produce so that we could see. The computer then processes these signals into a high resolution image. It could be of your brain, it could be of your spinal cord, of your muscles, of your organs. And we use it more or less to help detect tumors, any kind of possibility of strokes, or any other kind of structural abnormalities that might be present. In terms of spinal cord imaging, it allows us to see if there's any injuries or diseases located there. It takes a look at soft tissue details, where unlike CT scans, which is really better for bones, MRIs is perfect for muscles and ligaments in the brain. Now, besides the MRI, we have what we call a fMRI, or a functional MRI. This is a special type that really is used to track blood flow to help show which brain areas are active during that task. So, all right, let me just give you a bunch of little analogies to help you along the way. If we saw the CT scan being like a regular picture or photo, then the MRI is that you went out got the ballpark and got a super high resolution photo that's giving you plenty of details, particularly for soft tissue. MRIs uses magnets and radio waves, and it's going to create clear, detailed images of the body, especially our brain, as well as soft tissue. So those are the different that four at least that we could talk of. All right, so now I'm going to talk about a couple, well, not a couple, a few experimental methods that's used. Um, First, we have lesioning, and this is a method that's used particularly in neuroscience to help study the brain by deliberately damaging, removing, or even disabling a very small specific area of brain tissue. You could think of it as a detective experiment, or if you want, try to figure out what's a particular part of the brain does, you kind of turn it off, so to speak, then see what changes in behavior, let that be behavior, your memory, your movement, or emotion. So, for example, if lesion in a certain spot causes a rat to stop pressing a lever for food, then scientists they can conclude that that particular area is really important for motivation or for rewards. If a lesion would make someone lose their ability to speak but not to understand language, then we could take from that that section's really crucial for producing speech. So as you can see, lesioning can be used in several different ways. Just to run through some quickly, there's surgical removal, where that's cutting the tissue out directly, chemical lesioning, and that's using particular drugs to help kill or disable cells. And then there's also electrical lesioning, and that's used using a current, electrical current, to destroy cells specifically. Now, it's important to understand that while lesion studies have taught us a lot about the brain, this is still a very invasive method, and it can be extremely risky. So, more or less, researchers often would use less damaging tools like the MRIs or the brain imaging that I talked about earlier, or even transcranial magnetic stimulation. Okay. Now, another type of method is what we call electrical recording. And this technique, it's allowing scientists to kind of listen in on the brain's electrical activities, where the neurons, those brain cells, talk to each other by sending those tiny electrical signals that I talked about in the first part of this lecture. Electrical recording lets researchers pick up on the measure that'll spark so that we can understand the brain and the nervous system and how they work. So, breaking that down into making it in more layman terms, scientists will place these tiny electrodes, small metal wires, around the surface of your brain, on top of your head, your scalp, and inside specific brain areas, or as I said, the scalp. Similar to an EEG, And these electrodes will detect those electrical signals that's going to be produced when your neurons fire. So more or less, these signals, they'll be amplified, they'll get stronger, and they'll start to display on a computer screen so that researchers will be able to analyze those particular patterns. So it's important to understand why we try to do this in the first place. We're doing this because it allows us to work with the brain and see how it becomes more active during times when we're thinking or moving or feeling emotions. It's helpful to know that it identifies unusual patterns like epilepsy or, excuse me, I'm starting to lose my voice again. But when neurons fire too much or in the wrong way. So more or less, it's going to give you a concert recording, so to speak, of your brain's electrical symphony. It's in concert, and it's going to allow us to see and hear that and listen in. All right, now electrical stimulation. Excuse me. This is the flip side of electrical recording. Instead of us listening to what the brain or the nervous system is already doing, here doctors will use small amounts of electricity to kind of activate these neurons and then see what happens. So, more or less, there'll be a tiny electrical current that's going to be applied to a specific part of the brain or the spinal cord or your nerves using electrodes. And what happens is that the current excites the neurons within that spot, making them fire, and then those signals are going to react hopefully naturally. We do this so that we can discover what areas are in control, particularly when we're looking at movement or speech or emotions. It's quite helpful to pin things down. So that's what those are in a nutshell. Okay, so we're going to stop here. As you can see, this is an extremely large, very large chapter. And I'm going to stop here. As you can see, I put up a QR code today instead of making you do an assignment, an additional assignment, because you already have one that's due on Friday, and I've already given you an extra credit one. So as of today, your assignment is this lecture. Make sure you've watched it, I hope, and jot down whatever questions you might have. But go ahead and pause this video and scan that QR code so your attendance can be taken for today. On Friday, I will send out another reminder on whether or not we'll have a TA that day. Unfortunately, just like I was ill, our TA was ill and had an emergency. So yeah, again, I'm so sorry about that. But I will be double checking with her to make sure she'll be available. And if not, you'll get to unfortunately have another week, another day of online work only. But hopefully this is helpful, because guess what? The great news, even though I'm not with you and we're not, you know, conversing together, you have these videos that you'll have even when it's time for your exams. So even through the chaos, there's benefits. And let's keep it on a positive note. On that, I'm ending this video lecture. Have a good couple of days. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I'm hoping, because I'm starting to lose that voice, if you didn't notice, it's getting deeper. I didn't want to do AI today. But anyway, I will hopefully talk to you again soon. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to scan and do your attendance. I don't want to mark you out.